Namaste. Welcome. This is an earth element class. We'll take mainly floor poses as our main support in opening up the inner dialogue of the spleen meridian. And meridians overall are the energetic channels which moisten the chi and the blood and distribute it through the system. They also add lubrication and resiliency to the tendons and the joints. They are the architectural foundations of the whole interior of the body. So by focusing today on the spleen channel, we'll highlight in particular what we might call electricity, the pulse of prana that runs through these vital pathways, and a particular interest will be nourishing the spleen line. So spleen is the host to the earth element, and I think it's just rather noteworthy as we start this yin sequence that the somatic sensory experience of the yin poses are what grounds us to our earth center. And so while there are multi-layered and various benefits to exploring all of the meridians and all of the elements, I find that the earth channel is an appropriate place to start because it's our home base. And so this practice will connect us to our earth center, which also connects us to the center of all other things and beings and life forces. So may this stir up in you a sense of internal ease and balance, even if during the practice or after the practice there is a sense of chaos or winds of turbulence or the fire of anger, the kind of downward pull of water. All of these elements have their home in the foundation of earth. So we find that ground of being, and then we just feel from there. So let's start with downward facing dog. And because the element of the earth finds some of its stability in the structure of the bones, let's focus in this first shape on the physical architecture of the skeleton. So first, by way of plugging in to the ground, through the fingers, the bones of the fingers, and the base knuckles of the fingers, particularly the thumb and the pointer finger. Plugging in to the ground, find the earth. And then wrap the pronator muscles across the top of the forearms. These are the muscles that help draw the palms of the hands down. Wrap those pronator muscles in, and then lift from the base of the wrist all the way up through the inner arm to the inner shoulder head. Yeah. Now from there, I want you to play with some range of motion in the sternum and the shoulder joint. So you might find that as you draw the breastbone forward, the upper arm bones plug into the shoulder sockets. And then as you draw the heart back towards the thighs, you get some more extension in the cervical and mid-spine. And somewhere in between those two ranges of motion, you'll find your sweet spot. Great. So once you're in, we'll stabilize the upper body by fixing the shoulder heads and the scapula onto either side of the spine. Then the bottom tips of the scapula draw up towards the tailbone as the sit bones lift. And then you draw the low belly in. Wrapping the upper thighs in and back. As you draw the heels down, hug the shins towards one another slightly. 3 more breaths. And then you'll slowly walk the feet forward and the hands back for dangling forward bend. So this might be the appropriate time to start engaging with the breathing body. As we've moved from the physical dimension of the skeleton now to the cultivation of chi. So as the skull dangles off of the neck joint, you let even the heads of the shoulders round in just a bit as the sacrum spreads. And then you can draw a line of the breathing body from the sacrum to the base of the skull and back again on a few rounds of a slow and rhythmic inhale to exhale. And generally in the yin poses, I suggest leaning away from a manipulation of the breath. But because this posture itself has a little bit of a yang element to it, as we press down into the ground and the ground presses back up, this reverberation of earth chi through the soles of the feet, up through the earthen structures of the thigh bones, the femur heads plug in. You might also find that a yang-centric breath activity might serve you here. So for the last minute in this pose, I'll recommend you find a subtle ujjayi. And the slight constriction at the back of the throat, the whisper muscles contracting in, might actually allow more spaciousness in the neck as the head lowers towards the ground. And you thread the breath almost like you're brushing it through the back of the throat. While at the same time pressing into earth with the feet and the earth pressing back into you. In this way, finding home base again and again. So together, let's find a long, deep, slow in-breath and an exhale. And then we'll come to seated, just cross one shin bone in front of the other and find the floor. Okay. So we'll activate Mula Bandha, the root lock, and just close your eyes and venture down and in through that royal road from the insight center of the brain to the nucleus of our gatheredness in the low belly and the pelvis. And draw the sit bones on either side of the base of pelvis together. So you're contracting the sit bones strongly. And then the pubic bone and the sacrum, they also draw in towards the midline. Yeah, and then all of the fibers of fascia at the perineum and the root of pelvic floor, from the sit bones to the pubic bone and sacrum, they all gather inwards as well. So as you draw those 4 points to the centermost, Like the weavings of a hammock, all of that fabric draws in. And then from the very center of the mula, the root, you'll use an inhale and draw up towards the navel. So this contraction of Muladhara we'll find first with 100% intensity. So as strong as you can muster. And then I want you to cut that effort in half to 50%. And then again, cut it in half so you find 25% Mula Bandha activation, root lock with a gathering in and pulling up from the floor. Now maintain that 25% as we move into Uddiyana Bandha. So you might even find it's supportive to place hands on low belly as you create some resistance across transverse abdominis in the front of the abdomen, drawing in, cinching the waistline in, and tensing the front of the low belly just underneath the navel. Find 100% activation, drawing the navel point back towards the spine. And if you've lost Mula Bandha, pick the pelvic floor from the center up, draw the navel back, and then cut that in half. So 50% effort. And then cut in half again, quarter effort. And maintain. For just the seated practice here, a series of poses, maintain Mula Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha, as you draw the right fingertips down and you reach the left arm up and over for a side bend. So front of the low belly drawing back. And ensure that some weight is still distributed down and through the right sit bone. And then stretching up and over into this lateral flexion. And staying here. So you'll be breathing into the side body on the left, side ribs, even into the left lung and through the armpit and shoulder head. The spleen channel, while it starts at the base of the big toe, it does travel up the external obliques and up the rib lines. Lateral flexion to stretch through the spleen meridian, and of particular note here is a opening up through the ascending colon. So let's take 3 more breaths. And it's an inhale, you'll bring the torso back upright, but you'll fold the left hand behind you for a seated twist. Again, maintaining Mula Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha, just for these seated poses where the sit bones come in and you gather from the very root up. And from that centermost, you kind of revolve around the axis of the spine. So the ribs open up towards the left, and while the outer hips and waistline cinch in, the collarbones go wide and all the way through the root of the tongue here where the spleen channel opens up. So from the base of big toe, spleen line runs all the way up along the outer torso to the distal end of the collarbones. And then it's said that a channel opens up into the root of the tongue. So widen here, soften the palate. As you spin the shoulder heads further towards the left and reach through the crown. And in this rotation of the spine, there's a spiraling of earth chi up through the root all the way through crown of head. And so we might engage the breathing body to emphasize that trajectory. Now keep the right hand as it is. Keep the upper body in a twist. And then reach the left hand up and overhead for a side bend towards the front of the room. So you're in a twist and lateral flexion here. You might find this threads breath, interestingly, through some new avenues of the side body as you drape the fingertips forward and find 3 rounds of breath here. Bring a little weight back into the sit bones and find that curvature through the upper spine. And then the inhale draws the left hand up and over as we find side bend on the other side. So even though the body's physicality is tilting over towards the left, there's still an energetic commitment to grounding through the right. And so from right sit bone, drawing this reverberation of earth chi up through the bones on the right side body as you stretch through right ribs and all the way through right fingertips. Find 3 breaths. Now the inhale will lift the torso upright as you find your seated twist. And it starts, the initiation of the revolution around the spine starts gently and really quite easefully. And with the activation of Uddiyana Bandha at the low navel, you might find that over time the twist deepens on its own accord via the exhalation. But this is through the attitude of non-acquisition. Meaning rather than grasping or reaching for some expression of the pose that isn't already happening now, you're just retraining the system to connect into the immediacy of this experience, this twist, this breath. So we'll find 3 more rounds of breath here, and maintaining that resistance at the low belly doesn't mean that the inhale is restricted. It means that it opens up into the hara, low belly space, more energetically. So you can feel on in-breath that earth center through the root, a sense of spaciousness, and the exhale just grounding into the weight of the pelvis, the thigh bones. And then we'll inhale and draw right arm up and overhead for lateral flexion with the taste of a twist. And the more you draw the navel back, the more openness through the right lung and side body you find. And then let's inhale and come all the way back through. And come onto the hands. Draw the legs behind you for tabletop. So again, with the earth element, we spend a lot of time in the transitions just restructuring the skeleton's support by the earth. So press into the base of the finger joints and the base of the wrist. And as we move into cat-cow, I'll ask that you tuck the toes under as you drop the belly on an in-breath and glide the pubic bone between the thighs. The thighs wrap in and back. And the throat opens. There's this soft channel way of earth chi from the collarbone to the root of the tongue. That's where the spleen meridian ends. So we'll keep the jaw wide and soft. And find a slight compression here through the sacrolumbar region of the spine, so our first back bend. And we'll just spend a few rounds of breath so that we're rolling through the low belly, earth element, spleen, stomach, digestive processes. It's helpful just to sometimes let the belly hang. So take an inhale as you press the hands into the ground and draw the wrist creases back towards the thighs. And then exhale for your cat pose. Round the pubic bone towards the sacrum and then press down and forward with the wrists as you round through upper back. And then we'll roll through the shoulder heads here a few times. Inhale. Draw belly down for your cow pose. And exhale, curl and round. Inhale, drop belly, lift the gaze. And exhale, as you curl and round, lift the top rungs of the ribs up towards the sky. Back of the heart up and spreads. Toes stay tucked, and this time inhale, drop the belly. And for the change, we'll come into cat pose again, but we'll bring the knees with us. So exhale, draw the knees to the belly. Use the low core and transverse abdominis to draw the thighs in. Inhale, drop belly. And drop the knees. And exhale again, curl and round in, draw the knees in with you. Hug the inner ankles and the inner shins towards one another. Pull low belly and the thighs up. One more time. Inhale, drop and open. And exhale, curl and round. Drop the shins, bring the tops of the feet to the floor. Widen the knees for child's pose. Rerooting at Earth Center. Through sacrum, and this time a release of the bandhas, so the energetic locks where we've now pulled Earth Chi in, we might just allow that to spread. So soften the root and the low belly. So that Earth Chi might just drift up and bathe hara space, kidneys, spleen, in a sense of groundedness. So the earth element is like the favorite child of all the elements. It's where all of the other energies are sourced from. And the ancients considered the spleen as a source of life. for all of the other organs. And in the Neijing, this classic Chinese text, it said that the viscera all desire their breath of life from the spleen. It's the spleen that is the foundation of existence for all other viscera. So the spleen's the kind of official in charge of distribution of energy, the transporter of energy. It supports digestion by transforming our food into qi. It governs the strength of the muscles, the flesh, the limbs. And because it's our earth structure, it literally provides organization and support. So it lifts and holds the internal organs. It keeps them in place and prevents prolapse. Keeps the blood inside the vessels. Again, our architecture. So a slight compression here from the base of the big toe, all the way up just behind the shin, and into the psoas and through the side body. So really up from IT band and the outer rib cage to the distal end of collarbone, the spleen meridian travels. Let's take 3 more breaths here. And then we'll walk the hands back as we lift the torso up. And we'll tuck the toes under for toes pose. And the most noteworthy physical objective of the shape is an opening in the plantar fascia at the soles of the feet, which have really important repercussions in the elasticity of that tissue and how the spine and weight of the pelvis properly navigates the compression of gravitational pressure down the spine. So in other words, a lot of low back pain from asymmetry in the pelvis is really agitated by tight plantar fascia. So low back pain, a really easeful way to mitigate that is through stretching the soles of the feet. While this pose gains in intensity the longer you endure, know that you can always lessen the sensation by bringing some weight into the hands. And because the spleen meridian starts at the big toe and travels up just behind the shin and thigh, the groin and stomach, the base of the big toe is an important connection to earth. So you can lift up earth chi through the inner leg line into the hara center. And there are 3 gateways of pulling in prana from external earth source into the system. The first is the gateway or the pump of sole of foot up into the pelvic bowl and the low belly. So just 3 rounds of the earth chi pump as you inhale, drawing earth chi up through the soles of the feet and most notably the base of the big toe, up the intercellular spaces of the legs into low belly and pelvis. And then you exhale and just settle it. Twice more like that, inhaling, gathering through the kidney 1 point at the sole of the foot and up into the engine of the hara. And exhale. And then one more time through. Drawing earth chi in. Right? Bandha, another word for bandha is gather. So gathering in through the feet. And exhaling as you widen the sphere of spaciousness in the low belly and the pelvis. Okay. Let's draw the hands down and you can tap the top of the feet to release. And just so we can feel the reverberations of the feet up to the low pelvis, let's draw the toes under, and just so we can feel the results of that shape through the trajectory of low spine, we'll press into another dangling forward fold. So this way you can resolve any tension in the soles of the feet. And also allow a flushing of the knees, which have been in flexion for a notable length of time. And then just sense into the elongation of the spine, and of particular interest, any resolution of symmetry that starts to spread through the sacrum. And just take 5 rounds of breath here. And in a moment, we'll move into a series of poses which further address spleen channel. But the first will be an emphasis on the lower quadrant of the spleen channel. So from the base of the big toe, just behind the shin bone, to the interior of the knee. Runs right through the meniscus. So we'll take a version of pyramid. Just draw the right leg forward and angle the left heel at about 45 degrees. And then drape the low belly and the kidney band over right thigh as you fold in. Press into the base of right toe, the base of pinky toe, and then the center point of the heel. So a lot of yoga asana practitioners talk about the 4 corners of the feet, but here I find it's easier to investigate 3 corners. So like a triangle, which has the most stable base. Then draw the right heel energetically back towards the left heel so that the inner thighs scissor and you peel the right outer hip back. Good. And then gather earth chi up from the base of the right toe knuckle up the inner line of the right leg, just behind the tibia, the shin bone. So hugging the muscles to the structure of the earthen bones in the low body. Beautiful. And then from here, keep the right leg as is. Draw the left shin bone down behind you. And we'll come into a seated twist. So right foot on the outside of the left knee. Draw the right hand behind the sacrum and hug the thigh bone in as you spread the collarbones wide. And I'll suggest to you in the twist that the neck and skull mirror the same revolution of the rest of the spine. So often in the seated twist, because there's a base in the pelvis, we might often crane our necks and tweak through a cervical twist. But I'd rather keep the base of skull in line with the shoulders for an even tone from the tip of the coccyx to the root of the tongue. Now, because we've investigated of particular note so far the earth anatomy or the architecture of the pose, let's leave the body behind for a moment and investigate mindfulness of the mind. So not just how the spine is revolving, but what is the mind's relationship to the experience of this pose? And earth energy is like the earth mama, this Gaia of giving. So we might feed our own systems with a tone of nourishment. A fabric of utter acceptance for the state you find yourself in, both body and mind, just having a chance to relax towards the center with one another. Three more breaths. And then I thought we'd add just a little flavor of whimsicality to the sequence. So a bit of a funky transition here as you come back to center, first with the skull and then shoulder heads and the rest of the spine. You're just gonna bring the whole twist around as you come to pyramid pose to face the other side. So this time, left toes point forward and the right heel comes behind at a 45 degree. Gorgeous. Yeah, and I love the activation of finger pads pressing into the earth, another important portal way of earth chi through the sensitive layers of the skin of the fingertips. And then pressing into the back heel. Draw the left hip back, but spin the right thigh in. And then a slight tone to low belly as you square through the sacrum. And find 5 rounds of breath here. So So I'll join you for the last few rounds of breath as you hug the outer hips in and press down through the base of the left big toe, but drawing earth chi up through that portal. And then the right shin bone drops for the seated twist. So left foot will navigate outside the right knee, and then you'll spin over towards the left. So the left knee hugs into sternum. Sternum drifts over through the left collarbone. Yeah. So mindfulness of the mind dictates that the spaciousness we set to accept conditions as they arise governs the overall balance in the system. So earth energy reminds us of the unstruck field where, despite the conditions of the environment, the base of ground stays stabilized. So you might find in this pose that agitations and overwhelming emotions emerge as all of the other elements kind of flurry across the earthscape. But they also dissolve, and what's left is the container of acceptance that you set. So we have all of the elements arising and dissipating. The earth is the fertile soil of our home ground. Let's take 3 more breaths here. And again, a little funkiness to the transitions in the sequence here, just to keep you on your toes. We'll have a seated figure 4 towards the front of the room, so keep the orientation of that left ankle where it is and just slide to face the front so that the left ankle's atop the right thigh. Sole of the right foot on the ground. Beautiful. Yes. So the spleen channel, as I said, does run across the IT band and up through the rungs of the ribs. So a nice compression through the left hip will activate or stimulate the flow of chi through that component of the spleen channel. And we might instigate that further by bringing our right fingers to the left toe knuckle and just giving a slight massage here through the front and the back of the big toe joint. You might find a little flex to the left foot and a little self-massage. So spleen line runs from the big toe up the whole bone towards the front of the ankle. And you might find as you run your finger along that line that there's a little divot of tenderness. So anywhere you find that, just spend a while there. And then to keep the prana flowing, you can drop that hand and just roll through some full range of motion in the ankle joint, something we don't find as natural range of motion, because normal range of motion just dictates that we're often in flexion. So finding that lateral flexion in the ankle joint, really healthy to keep durability of the whole joint capsule. And you can roll through both directions here. Okay. And we'll come to the other side. So left foot down. Right ankle drapes across the distal end of that femur bone. And just spend a few moments first drawing into your center. And that might mean that a sense of stability in the pelvis is realized by the left ankle pulling away. But for those of us looking for deeper sensation through the outer hip, you could draw the left heel in, walk the sit bones in, and find a deeper compression for that external rotation in the right thigh. So find your sweet spot. And then, of course, a little spleen 1 point massage at the right foot. And finding any avenues of tension along the metatarsal, the big toe bone, just feeling where it connects to the top of the foot and into the ankle, that whole spleen line. And on any of the meridians, pay particular interest to where there's a tenderness. And you might just look up, there's a wealth of encyclopedias online that show each point and what they mean and what they might signal in the overall balance of the body. So the meridian points, the acupuncture points, will be tender as a reflection of the interior state. So just something to take note of. And when you're done with that, you can do some rolls through the ankle. Okay. And we'll release and draw the soles of the feet together and knees wide for a butterfly forward bend. And even if you're practicing alone, breathe as if you're offering your internal source of chi into the outer world. Like you're mixing the environment of the earth around you and all of the beings that are also walking through it with you. And you just breathe out this offering, this gift of heightened chi consciousness. And then just observe where within the body your breath lives in the pose. And where does it travel? Maybe along the length of spine, or the heads of the thigh bones. Maybe you find it in the low belly. It doesn't matter where you find it. It doesn't even matter if you find it. But if the breath reveals itself to you just through this gentle inquiry inwards, see if you can use it as an inroads for a more integrative experience in the asana. What does it feel like? To rest in the breathing body. All of the major meridians are accessed through this pose. The inner leg line opening, liver, spleen, kidney. All the elements feeding back into earth. So let's find 3 more rounds of breath here. And then inhale, come up. Bring the hands to the outer knees and draw them in. And then long. And come to lay on the spine. So we'll take a last sequence of hip flexion and spinal rotation to tug on the fascia where the spleen channel tends to get most congested. But because we've been in knee flexion for so many poses, I really like to emphasize that the vulnerability of the knee joint appreciates a deep repose. So to flush through the knee here, we'll just keep the legs extended for a few rounds of breath and press through the base of the big toe as the tips of the toes draw back towards the shins. You'll flex through the foot and really press through base of big toe. And then the quadriceps will wrap around the femur bone, and the calves you'll draw up towards the shin bone so that you find some structural integrity and some yang activation through the earth element respect of the legs, the bones of the legs. And draw the front of the knee and the patella down towards the earth so you flush the back of the knee. Resting the feet. The calves and the quadriceps go wide and heavy. And then bending into the right knee, place the sole of the foot on the ground and drape the left ankle atop the thigh bone for figure 4. Drawing the right knee in towards the chest, and you might wrap the hands around the front of the shin or the back of the thigh. And then slide the outer hips away from the ribs. But press the right knee in towards the breastbone. So as I mentioned, there are 3 gateways of drawing earth chi into the body. We've, in toes pose, pulled earth chi up through the kidney 1 point at the sole of the foot. In this shape, we'll go through 5 rounds of breath through the second gateway. And this is through the mula, pelvic floor. So as you inhale, you draw earth chi in through the root to feed the reservoir of chi that subsides at the low belly. And you exhale and just let the hips widen as you soak in that sea of chi source. So, inhaling, pulling in through the root. And it's physical, yes, but more energetic in nature, the slight lifting up of that mula point, and then exhaling to settle in. 3 more rounds as you gather the resources of vibrant earth chi, healthy, balanced, stable, into the home of the hara. And then releasing the breath pattern and bringing the right foot to the floor, keeping the left ankle where it is, and then just drawing the left foot to the outer right hip for a figure 4 supine twist. And right away, drawing that left sitting bone long towards the right heel, we'll spread the spleen line as it runs from the IT band all the way up through the left collarbone. And this is our 3rd twist in the sequence, so you might have picked up by now that the twisting action in the vertebra are a safe and effective way to stimulate our digestive health. Twisting to wring out the colon. And of course, there's a sense of mindfulness of the mind also supporting digestion. So in emphasis in the pose on your awareness aptitude. How fully capacitated am I to focus on attention of present moment? Will help soothe the nervous system, the digestion system, as the two interrelate strongly. Right? 70% of our serotonin is actually created in the GI tract. So there's a sharp relationship to GI health and overall state of the mind. You can't quite find nirvana in the midst of indigestion. And so my father, who's a gastroenterologist, has told me for years of his patients who suffer from Crohn's disease and severe bloating and chronic abdominal pain. And the lack of restfulness that they have available to them, either through practice life or support of teachers and spiritual friends. So health of the spleen impacts state of the mind, and vice versa. Let's inhale and come up into neutral with both feet on the floor. And as you bring your hands to your low belly, just take a few rounds of breath to re-stabilize through the pelvis and find your ground again. Welcome the earth energy as it spirals up so eagerly to meet you through the feet and the root. Earth Chi hosts this benevolent quality of wanting to remind the practitioner that it belongs here. This is your home, your ground of being. Let's draw the right ankle atop the left thigh for a figure four on the other side, and drawing the right knee in. Finding whatever grasp suits you. And also finding 3 rounds of just an effortless rhythm to your respiration. And then when you feel balanced on this side, we'll move into a version of supine twist again with the legs in the same orientation as they are now in figure 4. And just start to feel the subtle nuances of this side as you travel effortlessly through a series of what we might call micro releases through the shoulder head, the frontal ribs, even the kidneys might add to a sense of dropping and spreading. Beautiful. And we'll come through the last gateway of gathering earth chi into the home of the low belly center. And it will be 5 rounds. So we've moved through the foot pump at kidney 1 point, sole of foot, and also through the root. Now we find the earth chi pump through the navel. This Uddiyana Bandha activation. So we'll inhale and start physically strong. The first breath, you'll draw the navel point strongly back to the tissue just in front of the sacrum. Pulling earth chi into the center strongly, and then exhaling, widen through the kidney band on the back body. Yes. And again with the physical sense, inhale, drawing strongly back through the front of low belly and the navel point. And exhale. Now for the last three, soften the activity so it's almost imperceptible to the naked eye, and just inhale and welcome earth chi in through the navel. And let it spread through the areas that need some upgrade on the exhale. Twice more. Beautiful. Let's release the breath and come through to find a neutral pose. So before we find Shavasana, you have the choice for either constructive rest with the knees knocked in and heels out, finding internal rotation through the femur heads, or you might find external rotation and come into Supta Baddha Konasana, reclined bound angle. So either the knees are together or the soles of the feet are together. As you rest your hands on the low belly. And we greet this pose as if it were the hallway that led us into the inner sanctum where Shavasana awaits. So preparing the system for deeper rest where we recultivate our relationship to the ground. And then we find Shavasana. The full experience of gravity in the body. How Gaia reminds us that we inherently belong. that we're wide and grounded and spacious enough to hold all of the elements. The earth as our ground. And slowly make your way back up to seated. So I want to close with a verse from Diane Connolly's book, The Law of Five Elements, which I just conveniently have right here. To any people who live from the earth, the closeness and importance of nature are understood. They live in the elements, depend on the cycles of the seasons, survive according to the laws of the universe, and revere the flow and changes of the world around them. They watch, heed, learn, and steep themselves in the elements so basic to life. And just as nature all around them is going through its natural processes of change, they instinctively know that the nature inside them follows these same patterns. That intuitively, human beings go through the cycle of the seasons within themselves. That the elements are recreated within them. Each element is ever present and ever basic to life. It is not just in the world around them that the tender shoots of spring are born, bursting into life. It is also within themselves. It is not only summer that things bloom and flourish, but also within them. And so on with all the seasons. We are the seasons. We are the elements. Nature is without and within us, each of us every moment. We are a replica of the universe passing from season to season in a natural, unending cycle of life.